Ooh, a stage. I wonder who's on.
The Bible teaches very clearly that God made the world in 6 days, and he did it about 6,000 years ago.
Fuck, why this?
Rough them up.
Nice pun, but you got it. So as a follow-up to the previous video on evolution, here we are with young Earth creationism, since they kind of tend to go hand in hand. For this, I'll be going and focusing on probably the most infamous young Earther out there. That's right, it's Dr. Dino himself, Kent Hovind. Kent, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kent Hovind. I taught high school science for 15 years. Now for the last 10 years, I've been in evangelism, and I travel around and speak on the subject of creation, evolution, and dinosaurs.
Okay, short. Keep it short. My show, remember? So, yeah, Kent is a young Earth creationist. He thinks that the planet, and in fact the entirety of the universe, was made in 6 literal days. Noah's flood actually happened, and the planet is about 6,000 years old, as well as the entire universe is about 6,000 years old. He doesn't believe in evolution. He thinks God is absolutely the best. The funny thing is, he thinks dinosaurs were on the ark with Noah. That about sum it up, Kent?
Sure.
Cool. Now, I have a standing promise to a friend of mine that certain topics and jokes are going to be off limits. So keeping away from those will be very taxing. But I will refrain, my bad. It'll be about a 1.6 million to 1 shot of me making a joke about those off-limits topics, and I speak with the utmost conviction. It would be criminal to bring them up, and I'm not going to lie about that.
Knock it off.
Anyway, in research for this video, I find Kent guilty of being more intellectually bankrupt than Discord's favorite punching bag, Darth Dawkins. Bankrupt.
Knock it off.
Okay, I'll stop. For now, let's see. Where should we get started?
And the swallowing the camel of believing that we all came from a rock.
Rocks. Good idea. Let's start with the geological column. So Kent used to show off this little children's toy that he would shake up the sand inside of it, and it would neatly layer itself. It was pretty cool to look at. He would use this and say, this is how rock layers formed in the earth from Noah's flood. He's mentioned about how heavier sediment comes into rest at the bottom first, and then lighter and lighter and lighter until the lightest material is at the top layers. So let's start there and show how this is just wrong from what we observe in nature. You know, on second thought, he'll just dismiss that with a hand wave. So for shits and giggles, let's entertain and think about all of this for a moment and put it into real, true numbers. Since he thinks dinosaurs lived alongside mankind and they were on the ark, that means that they would have had to go extinct after Noah landed just 4,000 years ago. 4,000 years ago.
Well, that's wonderful, and that's practical, and that's useful.
So what Kent must believe is that the flood is what ended the Permian Age, and the Triassic period is after the flood. This way, there's enough time for his worldview to account for the dinosaurs of the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous period to have lived, populated the planet, died off, buried, and fossilized, and they are very large and heavy. So they died off at the end of the Cretaceous period. Following that is the Paleocene era, the Eocene, toes in a horse, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, and Holocene eras. Now, ignoring the many, many layers of rock that we see within those eras, that's 4,000 years until current age. Subtract 2,000 years of recorded history since Jesus, leaves 2,000 years for all those layers to form. Just a sec, Ken. Let's give the dinosaurs a minimal 500 years to breed and populate. Giving them more makes this even more ridiculous. Now, the Cretaceous-Paleogene, or the KPG boundary on the Earth, beneath which we find the dinosaur fossils, and above we do not. No dinosaur fossils above the KPG barrier. It marks the extinction of the dinosaurs. This now leaves 1,500 years. And this is generous. The KPG boundary is 12 miles down from the top of the column. Let's let those numbers sink in a moment. This is Kent's worldview. So, now it's time for math. You ready? Okay, let's get started. Okay, 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Is 12 miles, so we multiply that by 12 to get 63,360 feet. Assuming that the layers formed uniformly, this means that 42.24 feet of rock were added to the geological column every year. 12 inches per foot means 506.88 inches were added per year, or 1.39 inches of rock were added to the geological column per day. Almost an inch and a half of rock falling from the sky, covering the entire planet, or lava of different types covering everything evenly every single day. So, I gotta ask, how do you think they kept the houses standing?
Well, I think
It doesn't matter what you think.
See, even the rock doesn't care what you have to think. And if you think that's stupid, that 12 miles is a fact. Bones need to be buried to fossilize, and even Kent admits to that. Plus, the geological layers are fairly even across the planet where we see them to make up that column. But you say we see dinosaur fossils on the surface. Why? Well, one reason is tectonic plate shifting. That's how earthquakes happen, by the way, like Japan. Tectonic plates shift and push up different parts of the column. At times, the column is pushed all the way up to and past the surface. This isn't evolution, it's geology. You, me, Kent himself, and every person in Timbuktu can go out and study this stuff. And keep in mind, the 12 inches of rock still has to be a thing because it's perfectly even all the way around the entirety of the planet, even when it's been worn away from erosion, which is another reason why we see fossils on the surface. So Kent not only has to believe that 12 miles of rock were dumped on the planet, but after that, tectonic plates had to shift up, in some places, more than 12 miles since the time of Christ. But in recorded history, we do not see 12-mile-high mountains eroding away, so the numbers are even more ridiculous, with miles of rock moving over the course of less than 2,000 years, to the point it would have had to create so much friction and heat, because, you know, that is a thing, and not only above ground, but below sea level, enough to steam up the entire ocean and boil it. Don't believe me? Have a look at the Hawaiian Islands. You can literally see from the ocean floor the path the volcanic activity took place from the island of Hawaii, stretching west a third of the way across the Pacific Ocean. The Hawaiian island chain themselves is 1,500 miles long, with the underwater ridges stretching triple that distance, so about 4,500 miles. That is tectonic plate shifting a quarter of the way around the globe. And this means all of the plates would have been shuffling around and shifting in all that time to see what we do now. Not to mention the Atlantic Ocean, which you can see the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where the plates are moving away from each other and putting hot lava right there underwater to do all that boiling. Kent, this is your worldview. Not only is this insanely ridiculous, But it's impossible.
Man, that's ridiculous.
Okay then, tell me how this works.
I don't know.
Now, I could stop here, but you all know I'm not. I need to whack a theist. Okay, that was silly. Next, let's do something fun. Let's show what Kent thinks happened instead of what science says about evolution.
It is my contention that there is absolutely nothing about evolution that is scientific.
Yes, it is, Kent.
Nobody's ever seen a frog produce a non-frog or a cow produce a non-cow.
Okay then, Kent. What is a kind?
If it's able to reproduce, it's the same kind.
I don't like that one. Any others?
I would say the same kind of animal are those that were probably originally able to reproduce. In the original created kind, they were able to reproduce, and they may have diversified now because of all sorts of factors, that now they're no longer able to reproduce, but they're probably still recognizable as the same kind, as having descended from an animal.
Much better. I like how you have two options. Just wish you weren't as long-winded with that second one. Okay, so canine kind, feline kind, etc. What does this mean for Kent? Kent has to think that his first kind had to give birth to a shitload of separate birthing pairs. Ignoring the entire evolutionary line will take just the species we see today. There are 37 distinct species of canine. This is because if we include the entire line, we're talking of hundreds. Absolutely hundreds. Including dog bears and bear dogs, like the Epicyon and the Hemicyon. I should mention seals were in there too, but we'll worry about that later. Kind of shits all over the dogs become dogs thing because a dog became a bear. But let's focus on the 37 for now. Kent's initial canine kind would have had to give birth to not just 37 times, to 37 different species of canine. So much for the dogs become dogs thing. But it would mean going from the mountain they landed at, walking north to the Russia, and starting the species up there, then going west to the UK and giving birth to yet more species of canine, and then traveling around the Mediterranean Sea to Africa, across the desert, populating there, and then includes swimming across the Atlantic fucking Ocean to the United States, trekking all the way down to South America after getting to North America, and then swimming across vast oceans to get to Australia and the Philippines to breed even more species of canine.
Man, that's ridiculous.
Oh, just a sec, Kent. I'm not even done yet. Or, and I mean or, that pair gives birth to 37 litters of different species of breeding pairs that then make all those trips out as infants while feeding on the literal hundreds of species of mouse, rat, and other rodents, also trying to make the same trek, while those infant pairs are growing up and making sure they all head to their appropriate locations across the globe so that one of them can be seen in the wrong place. You know, so an Arctic fox doesn't just end up in, say, South fucking Africa. Keeping in mind, this is the minimum number of litters to get this done. A canine's gestation period is about 2 months, each litter needing to be different. That's 6 litters a year, doing nothing more than doing like they do on the Discovery Channel. That adds up to 6 years. Actually 6.5, but who's counting? They spent 1 year on the Ark, 6 years of non-stop fucking and pumping out babies. The canines came on board as adults, so at least 2 years old at that point. So by the time they're done with all of this, they are 9 years old at minimum, all the while getting rained on by over an inch of rock every day. In the end, Kent has to believe that a generic canine gave birth to the short-haired dog of South America, the African wolf of North America, the coyote of the United States, the dog of the entire bloody fucking planet. The Ethiopian wolf of its namesake, the golden jackal of southern Asia and eastern Europe, the wolf of various countries, the crab-eating fox, and the maned wolf of South America. The dhole of Asia and China, the Falkland wolf and the South American fox are their namesakes, the black-backed and side-striped jackal of Africa, Darwin's fox, Kulipo, Rory fox, Pampas fox, Szechuan fox, South American gray fox, and bush dog of South America, the African wild dog, the raccoon dog of Europe, Japan, and China, plus the Japanese raccoon dog that's a separate species, the bat-eared fox of Africa, the Arctic fox of like the far north of 3 continents, the Bengal fox of India, Blanford's fox from Saudi Arabia, the Cape fox of South Africa, the Corsac fox of Central Asia, the Fennec fox of Northern Africa, the Kit fox of the United States and Mexico because foxes without borders, the pale fox of the desert Africa, Ruppel's fox of North Africa, the red fox of like everywhere except South America because they wanted to be cute, the swift fox of Central United States, the Tibetan fox of just fucking guess, the gray fox of Southern United States and Mexico because who needs a passport, and the island fox of just the fucking Channel Islands off California because of course the United States needed to be special.
You're kidding. Man, that's ridiculous.
Oh, you thought that was all ridiculous? Oh boy, we're just in the middle of this. We got more to go. Okay, let's see. We showed how young Earth speculation after the arc was dumb. We showed how the geological column would make 0 sense in his worldview. What else can we talk about?
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know much, Kent. Well, we talked about radiocarbon dating in the last video with Neff and Matt, the fact that it can be measured and dating the geological column would be a problem for Kent, the fact Pango exists and is about 10,000 years old, which means it predates Kent's Earth. Come on, Kent, other than your Kynes hypothesis and the geological column, what's your best evidence for the Earth being young outside of the Bible?
I don't know.
What's wrong, Kent? Feline kind got your tongue? Well, here, I have an idea. Let's talk about the age of things we see here on the planet that are evidently older than your existence. Keeping in mind, Kent's world reset 4,000 years ago. So nothing on Earth could be older than that, right?
Sure.
Let's start with the most famous one we just mentioned, Pando. I mentioned this one in passing with Neffy and Matty Boy, but let's talk a little bit more about this clonal colony for this time. Pando comes from the Latin word for eye spread. It's a clonal organism, a male quaking aspen in Utah in the United States. He takes up 106 acres of land and is the largest tree by both weight and landmass. All total, this tree weighs about 13.2 million pounds. It's not just the heaviest tree, but the heaviest organism on the planet. Pando's age and scale were verified as recently as 2008, and it's still being studied to find out how it's been able to be sustained for 9,000 to 12,000 years. The entire tree even changes its foliage in unison in the fall. But that's just one. Speaking of one, I can hear Matt now bitching that it's a clonal colony. So each of them is not that old. Okay, well, how about Methuselah? He is a Great Basin bristlecone pine in the White Mountains of eastern California, about 3,000 meters above sea level, in the Inyo National Forest. It's been studied and found to be the oldest tree that is non-clonal, at 4,800 plus years old, just by the ring count. That's older than his global flood and somehow isn't buried under miles of rock. Oh, but these are just trees, right? We can't just talk about trees. Okay then, how about the glass sponges on the East China Sea that are 10,000 years old? Or the black coral specimens living for 4,265 years? These species live from 1,500 to 3,000 feet below sea level. Any deeper would crush and kill them. So adding 3,000 feet on top of them with the weight of the water it would take to cover the planet would have killed them all off. Funny how it didn't.
Well, that's wonderful, and that's practical, and that's useful.
So let's recap here for a bit. From Kent's worldview, trees can survive being buried underwater for an entire year. Almost 1.5 inches of stone rain came crashing down over the entire planet for 15 centuries, and it didn't bother anyone, including the Romans, that hung around and recounted none of this going on. The Roman aqueducts must have been pretty freaking strong. While shortly after that, the biggest erosion event and land movement, with the extent of some plates moving over 4,000 miles after that flood. That's 3 miles a year. Even if we are stupendously generous to Kent and say the tectonic plate movement started at the time of creation 6,000 years ago, and that they stopped happening before recorded history, that's 1 mile per year up to the time of Christ. And no one in his camp thinks this is a problem. Because scientists, they're the idiots that don't know what they're talking about, right? The thing with Kent, and you can look at every debate he's had, every single one I researched for clips on this video, not once in any of the videos I watched does someone even bother to put his young earth creationism on trial for more than a casual comment that Kent just ignores. Everyone just defends evolution or attacks evolution. All Kent does is take the Bible and point to that book of short story myths and puts absolute authority on every subject ever. He uses practice buzzwords and deceitful lies about how evolution works, and he gets it completely wrong. And he denies the majority of any evidence put in front of him while speaking with conviction. I think it's time he gets himself a new debate where he defends his view. Let's stay together and whack a theist. Nah, the plushie didn't do anything. And I don't think Kent needs any more encouragement to hit anything else after this. I'm going to go rebuild my shed in the backyard of my house. I even got a building permit to do it. But Kent wouldn't know anything about building permits, would he?
Knock it off.
Well, I am Corsi, and this is the Fluffy Atheist. You can usually find me on Discord and the Politics and Religion server, or just message me directly at Corsi Stardust. If you like this, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. No matter if you want to share a funny video with your friends, or you want to point and laugh. I'm good either way.